You are listening to the Wealth Formula Podcast with Buck Joffrey. Get ready to change your life.
Welcome, everybody. This is Buck Joffrey with the Wealth Formula Podcast coming to you from Montecito, California. And before we begin this show today, I want to give you some thoughts in terms of the end of the year here. It's December. If you are looking for any sort of tax mitigating investments, make sure you sign up for the Investor Club at wealthformula.com as soon as possible. If you're an accredited investor and get onboarded, there's still some opportunities there that can potentially mitigate your tax situation. And don't miss out. We've really only got a couple weeks here, max, at which point you can deploy for this year anymore. So go to wealthformula.com and sign up for Accredited Investor Club. Okay, now let's talk about a show today. It's a slightly different concept. It's a little bit sort of out of the everyday personal financing, but I think it's something that ultimately maybe a lot of people would consider, and that is the idea of packing up and moving to another country. You know, it sounds a little radical, and it's funny because I don't think I could permanently move anywhere. I am a child of immigrants myself, but so even though I may not look like your typical American, as my my daughter said the other day, she said, "Daddy, you're more American than Texas." And well, I think she might be right, just because I do really feel very, very happy with this country. I'm glad I'm an American. And I should, for one thing, it seems like some people in talking to our guests today don't feel that way. And they're feeling like just because of the election, they need to move out of the country. Well, to each his own, I guess. I think it's a little bit silly to do that. It's hard to find a country this many opportunities, and you can find plenty of places within the United States, I think, to meet your political taste just fine. But at any rate, listen, people are doing it for other reasons too that are not necessarily kind of based in politics. It's becoming, for some Americans, potentially a logical next step, whether it's the stretch, to stretch out the power of that strong U.S. dollar during, retirement to make sure it lasts longer, embracing a different lifestyle for a while, which I think is really an interesting idea, spending a few years somewhere else abroad just to feel like you've lived in this world, more than in just one place, or again, just taking advantage of some of the financial perks like tax savings where you can get sometimes. At any rate, whatever the case may be, the appeal of living abroad is growing. As you probably know, there's some spaces within this podcast ecosystem that are constantly talking about a plan B and all that kind of stuff. And, listen, I don't think of this as a plan B, because I think if the U.S. is such a mess that you're looking for a plan B, you're pretty much screwed. Okay. In my opinion, that's just the reality of it. But let's talk about some of the financial benefits, in countries like Mexico, Costa Rica, Thailand. Your money just goes further. Retirees can find things they can afford, things like beachfront living, which is extremely hard to do in the U.S. Now, especially like in California. Geez, if you want to live beachfront where I'm at, you get like 1,500 square feet for about $7 million right now where I'm at. And I'm not even kidding about that. 7-8 million at best, at the lowest. Retirees. So they're, you can find that kind of thing in other parts of the world still, and still maybe maintain some high quality healthcare, and even be able to afford some household help. All of this at potentially a modest budget. And with the U.S. dollar holding its strength, this isn't just about living cheaply. It's about really living well. Like Panama, for example, they don't tax foreign income and offers retirees major discounts on everything from medical care to transportation. Portugal, which I think sounds really cool. I've never been to Portugal, but I think I would like Portugal. I just think I would like it from photos and things like that, and the weather and all that. But anyway, Portugal sweetens the deal with this non-habitual residency program, which essentially eliminates taxes on certain income for up to a decade. But it's not just about saving money. It's also about living differently. So many Americans moving abroad talk about how the experience really opens their eyes to new cultures, new rhythms of life, and new possibilities, which, again, that sounds kind of cool, right? I mean, for a few years, if you can do it, and maybe you can. In Portugal, life apparently feels slower and more intentional, with days that revolve around community, great food, the natural beauty of the coastline. Doesn't that sound nice? It sounds kind of fun. Thailand offers a mix of vibrant city life and serene island escapes. A lot of people go to Thailand. Financial freedom and cultural reset really are big draws. But, there's more to the story. Some countries actively court expatriates with residency programs, tax incentives, and healthcare systems that that might be as good, or for some people might even be better if you don't have insurance and stuff, than Americans are used to. Add the benefits of the foreign earned income exclusion, which allows Americans working abroad to exclude up to $120,000 income from U.S. taxes. And, well, the move becomes even more compelling. And again, for a lot of you, I know this is probably really, maybe something to think for more than anything else, maybe retirement. So if you're looking for something even more unique, though, New Zealand might be a place to consider as well. It's known for its stunning landscape, safety, high quality of life. It offers an appealing combination of natural beauty and modern convenience. Ranks as one of the happiest and safest countries in the world. Great healthcare system. So whether you're considering retirement or just a major lifestyle shift, New Zealand is another place that you can potentially look into. And on that front, that's what this week's show is all about. My guest is an expert on relocating people to New Zealand, and he's going to talk about that country and all the potential benefits there. But, the big picture here, again, is, just to try to get you thinking about, maybe thinking outside of the box a little bit about what you might do during retirement. Or, for some of you, particularly physicians, it sounds like a lot of physicians are doing this thing in New Zealand because they need physicians quite a bit. I know at least one person, a friend of mine who I did residency with, who did, I think she's still in New Zealand after spending a year there. They just really liked it and ended up staying there. But I don't know, worth thinking about. If nothing else, it's something you can just kind of just think about yourself and whether this is something you might want to do in your life. Anyway, we'll have that interview with our guest from our New Zealand expert right after these messages. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today, my guest on Wealth Formula Podcast is David Andrews. David is founder and director of Visa Immigration Services and Higher Minds Recruitment. For the last 3 decades, he's worked in New Zealand, Australia, and the U.S. with his team. Basically specializes in helping people from all over the world relocate and work in New Zealand. And also helps New Zealand business owners find the right professionals from overseas to fill their job needs. David, welcome to the show.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for having me on your show.
Well, this is a sort of a little bit of a random topic for us, but I thought it was kind of somewhat peripherally interesting and may get some people to think about things. But let me ask you this: why New Zealand? Why would somebody in the U.S. Just decide to get up and migrate to New Zealand?
That's a good question. I've been having since the recent re-election of Mr. Trump, my phone and email has been quite busy with people from America wanting a change of country, change of direction. People come to New Zealand for many reasons. One is they don't like where they're living right now. 2, they think there's better investment opportunities here, better lifestyle opportunities here. Lots of reasons, but the main reason right now is a change of government. I have quite a few business professionals, doctors, nurses, wanting to have a different life, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So why, how is tell us about New Zealand. Why is it a great place to live? What is it that attracts people? I guess, I mean, kind of seems silly to me to migrate just because of an election, but what is it about New Zealand that makes it a particularly attractive place for these people?
Depends on their personal circumstances. One, obviously, the US dollar goes a lot further in New Zealand. You take $1 million in the US and you almost double that coming to New Zealand. We have a very small population for the land size. There's only 5 million people in the whole country. That's over 2 islands. We have the North Island and the South Island. The bulk of the population, at least 4 million, live in the North Island, 1 million in the South, where I live. So there's lots of space. We have a solid legal system based on English law. We have high standards of living, multicultural population. There's no gift, estate, or wealth tax, and no capital gains tax. It's just clean, green place to live,
Right. So when people are moving there, they are presumably they're renouncing their American citizenship.
Only if they decide to take New Zealand citizenship. The main investor category for coming into New Zealand is they are given a residence visa. So with the residence visa, they have a requirement on that where they only have to stay in New Zealand 171 days over a 4-year period, so they can come and go. When you have a permanent residence visa, you're not renouncing US citizenship. Only if you decide you want to become a New Zealand citizen and get a New Zealand passport, then you give up your American citizenship. So you can have a permanent resident and have 99% of the benefits that everybody else has, just not having the passport.
You talked a little bit about the dollar going a lot farther, I should say. Does that mean that or does that result, I should say, in a number of people coming there for retirement?
Yes, we have a retirement category where people will decide that they want to come and live in New Zealand, not make it a permanent home. Some people just come 6 months here, 6 months there. Other people would say, I want to retire to New Zealand. We have a lot of very wealthy people from the US who buy property in the South Island of New Zealand and have a big home and decide that they want a quieter life with lots of green space. And we have the ocean, the mountains. It's a very beautiful place to retire.
Sure. And in terms of that, that dollar going along, how would you what's a good way to think about this? I mean, what does $1 million buy you in New Zealand for a home versus say, obviously I'm in California, so it's a warped situation here. $1 million gets you maybe a garage at best. But how far does $1 million go in New Zealand?
It really depends on where you want to live and what lifestyle you want to live. The most expensive place to live in New Zealand is Auckland, which is a major city. The median house price there is $1 million New Zealand dollars,
which is a $500,000 US.
Yeah,
is that?
Yeah. And if you come to the South Island or where I live, you go to the very far south, you can get a really beautiful house for $400,000. It really depends on, you live in California, you live in the big city, or you live out in the desert. It's where you want to live and the sort of lifestyle you want to live. If you want to live big city, then you're going to pay the big city prices.
Right. What's the culture like in say Auckland? What is that like?
Very multicultural.
Yeah.
We have a lot of Pacific Island people because we're quite close to the islands. We have a lot of Asian population in Auckland. Very multicultural city, very modern city, close to the ocean, beautiful harbour. That's the main. Wellington is the capital, but Auckland is the main area people want to live. They tend to want to migrate to areas where there's other migrants of the same. There's a large Chinese community. There's a large South African community.
Right. And how about the weather? I presume it's good weather generally. I mean, we don't really.
We have we have 4 seasons. We have 4 seasons in 1 year, and the weather, Auckland and north of Auckland is semi sort of not subtropical. It's just moderate. It's like 20 plus degrees during the daytime, down to maybe 10 or 12 at nighttime. That's degrees C. And then the South Island, where I live, we have snow in the winter, 4 seasons. So there's quite a big difference between the far north and the bottom south, where we have the mountains and the snow and the skiing. Generally, it's
right.
It's a nice climate.
Yeah. So for people who are still, say they're I have a number of physicians, for example, who who are listening to this particular program. I actually have a friend, remarkably, who a few years ago did move to New Zealand with her husband and practiced there. I never talked to her about, what kind of pay she was getting compared to in the United States. But I presume if you're going there, with costs being lower, the reimbursement for, say, physicians and stuff is not going to be as high as it is in the U.S. as well. Is that right?
I would say that's fair. I mean, I'm working right now with a doctor and his wife's a nurse, and they are from Florida, and I'm working on bringing them to New Zealand right now. I'm going through the process of doing all the different registrations and transferring all their qualifications to come here. Depends on their specialist, but I mean they're going to be earning between $100,000 and $200,000 a year, and if they're both working, if you're earning a 6-figure salary, you're in the top 6% in New Zealand. So it's and their living costs and their housing costs are much less. It's more sort of comparable with their salary. People in high qualifications earn good wages, so they will have a good lifestyle. Plus, if they're selling up their properties in the US and coming here, they're going to have some money left over for putting in the bank or investing.
In terms of you talked a little bit about taxes before. I guess in the U.S. it's complicated. Unless you renounce your citizenship, you are still you're still responsible for your for your U.S. at least your federal taxes. You can probably talk to that a little bit, but you mentioned no capital gains, you mentioned no estate taxes, but how about just income taxes?
Income tax, if you're earning the 6-figure salary, you're going to be on the top income tax, which is 39%. That's the only income tax. We have no state or federal tax, and we have goods and services tax, which is 15%. It's usually included in the price. If you buy a loaf of bread for $20, it's $20 including GST. But if you're having a business, then you have 15% GST to pay on when you buy things and when you sell things. So we have goods and services tax, but that's the only two taxes.
Sure. And is that from the U.S. side, is that deductible against U.S. taxes?
I'm not sure how the tax system works. I mean, if you still have a tax residency status in the U.S. and you're earning money in New Zealand, I mean, you're paying income tax in New Zealand, I'm not sure that you would have to continue to pay tax in the U.S. unless you're investing here, and those investments are generating revenue that you may have to declare in the U.S. I'm not too familiar with.
How about business owners? How does it work there? Obviously, we have a different system where, you might be, you could have a corporation that's taxed separately. How does it work for business owners? What's the system over there?
So I run 3 businesses, and I pay tax as every year. Every year I have to pay my tax depending on my income. So I don't. If you're employed, you pay as you go. So you're taxed at source each week or each month.
So there really is no difference between being a business owner per se and someone who's employed. It's just a matter of how much income you make. Is that
pretty
right?
much. It's the tax system is quite simple. You earn it, we take
Yeah,
it.
not a lot of deductions and things like that. It's
But
not
you have your,
is
I mean, if you have a business, then you're claiming depreciation, you're claiming GST back on your purchases. So you buy a car for $50,000, and you're using it for business, you can claim 15% of that back. You can also claim depreciation on your fixed assets as you use them. So there are lots of tax benefits to having a business. I have an
Yeah.
accountant, and I basically just dump all my stuff on her every month and say, sort it out, please.
Yeah. It would seem to me that like one of the most appealing, and I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but the fact that you don't have capital gains taxes there is probably the one of the things that's appealing to the more affluent. Because if you don't have necessarily earned income and all you pretty much live on is capital gains, I'm guessing you probably have, say, like, people who have a lot of cryptocurrency, for example, might move there and renounce their U.S. citizenship because then they're not paying any taxes on that cryptocurrency. And have you seen that kind of thing?
Yeah, I've seen that kind of thing. Also in investments, I have clients who have come here and they're quite wealthy and they have a investment portfolio of properties, rental properties, and they don't work. They just survive off the income from the rental properties, and that's also an appreciating asset. You buy a house, it's going up in value while your tenants are paying off your mortgage, and you're living off the rental income from that.
Do you mean real estate in New Zealand or real estate in the U.S.?
Real estate in New Zealand.
Okay, so I don't know how real estate works there, but is it typical to have cash flowing real estate? In other words, money that's coming into somebody's pocket after a mortgage or whatever is being paid off, and is that considered income there?
Yes, I mean it depends on some people. We have what we call negative gearing, so they will have a property which they own and they put a tenant in there, and the property is making a loss on purpose to offset against their tax. The asset is appreciating because the property value is going up, but the tenant who's paying rent is not quite covering the mortgage. Therefore, that is you could claim that against your other taxable income.
Could you claim depreciation against your taxable income as well?
Well, most properties don't depreciate. You can claim repairs and maintenance and that sort of stuff. We have a property market in New Zealand is doesn't go down. Hasn't gone down for a long time. It's quite a solid.
It doesn't go down in the U.S. either, except for we have something interesting in the tax code, which makes it so that any property, regardless of whether it's gone up by millions of dollars, throws off depreciation every year, believe it or not. We have to pay recapture on that on sale, but that's one of the major drivers of real estate wealth in the U.S.
No, you don't. There's no depreciation on your property.
No, none of that.
Yeah.
So, when you compare, there's an entire, I guess, expatriate sort of community from the U.S. going to different places. How do you differentiate New Zealand compared to, any number of other places that people talked about, whether that's in South America or whatever?
I suppose people come to New Zealand because they want a certain lifestyle. There's sort of geopolitical reasons. They want to be far enough away from any nuclear explosion, for example. They want to be, I mean, we are the safest country in the world. If there's a big war somewhere, other people want New Zealand as a bolt hole. Mr. Bezos has some property in the South Island. If there's a major issues in the world, they'll jump on a plane and they'll come to their home in New Zealand. So there is a sort of a place to escape. But it's also people come here because they want a more quieter life, or they want a more rural life, or they want less population. Many different reasons.
Got it. You brought up a question for me, which was, you just mentioned Bezos owning property there. How does it work for Americans or to actually own property in New Zealand? Do they need to have some sort of residency, or can they own property in New Zealand just by, buying it there and just having it there and there's certain places in the world, like certain places even in Europe, where it's very challenging for Americans to own property unless they actually live there because of various restrictions on estate planning and that kind of
Hmm.
thing. Does New Zealand make it easy for people to simply own property in New Zealand, or is it a
You have
challenge?
to be a resident to own property, and there's also certain rules around. Um, it's called the Overseas Investment Act. If you, like Mr. Bezos, if he wants to buy a huge chunk of the South Island of New Zealand and make a permanent home there, he has to meet certain requirements of the Overseas Investments Act, which is just paperwork and documents and what you do with the land. Shania Twain has a property over here, or had. Not sure if she still has one. So there are ways. I mean, if you've got money, you can pretty much pay the people to
Yeah.
do that sort of work for you. So yeah.
Great. Well, this is being a somewhat of a foreign topic for me. What else is there that maybe I haven't asked you that you think it's important for people to know?
I mean, there's more than one way of coming to New Zealand. I mean, it's not just on the investment platform. You can come here. We have something called the Green List right now, which we are very, very short of skilled professionals, especially medical professionals and doctors. And there's a green list, and that green list gives you a straight to residency option. So if you, like the doctor I'm working with right now, when his visa is approved, he will automatically get a resident visa. So that gives people the surety that when they come here, they're not on a temporary visa, they're on a permanent visa, and they can stay. So that makes it more of a good reason to come here, knowing that you're going to get a resident visa. There are other pathways, grandparent visa, retirement visa, and because U.S. citizens, we have an agreement with the U.S. You can just get an e-visa and just come for a visit, really, really simply. And that's what I encourage people to do if you're thinking about investing or living here. Come and spend some time in the country and have a look around.
Yeah. How long does it take to fly there from, say, California or New York?
New York were doing direct flights a while ago. Usually people come from LA to Auckland's about 12 hours.
Direct flight? Is there a direct flight from LA?
Direct flight from LA, yes.
Yeah.
They
Interesting.
were also doing.
What is that? Australia's how far away?
Australia is 3 hours away to
Okay.
Melbourne and
Got it.
Sydney. So
Yeah.
that's. I think they were doing direct flights to Houston as well from Australia.
Got it.
So you
Got
can
it.
fly to
How about,
Australia, then come across to New Zealand.
I guess one last question, just, I'm just out of curiosity. Like, how's New Zealand in your opinion? Like, how would you characterize the difference between the culture of New Zealand and that of Australia? I mean, obviously you're pretty nearby, so I'm just curious if it's very similar.
I would say the culture is very, very, very much the same. I mean, I lived in the US for 3 years, so I lived in Miami, I lived in Florida, I lived in New York, so I'm pretty familiar with the US culture. I lived in Australia for 2 years as well. I would say the only major difference between the culture between Australia and New Zealand is the climate. It's a lot warmer there, and it's a huge continent. I mean, if you get in your car in the South Island here, you can only drive for a maximum of 8 hours in north to south, east to west, an hour. So Australia is a very, very large continent, and it's a lot warmer. And another thing, we don't have anything that will kill you here. We don't have crocodiles. We don't have poisonous spiders. We don't have snakes.
Oh, okay.
Australia do. So another reason to come to New Zealand.
Nothing. Well, good. Okay, no Crocodile Dundee, something like
No,
that.
you can go there and look at crocodiles, but we don't have anything nasty here.
And great whites or anything like that off the
We have
ocean?
we have sharks, and but they seem to be quite
Yeah,
friendly.
sure. Great. Well, how do people get a hold of you if they want to learn more, or maybe they're thinking about at least checking it out and maybe travel there and see what their options are? Maybe they're thinking about retirement there, or even, working there for a few years or something like that. So, how do we get in touch with you?
So I'm happy to give anybody a free 15-minute consultation, via Zoom or via online meeting. My website, visavisa.co.nz, and my email, david@visavisa.co.nz. I'll post those in the links. But yeah, jump on my website or send me an email, and I'm more than happy to just check the time zone before you request a meeting, so I'm not waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning. But I'm happy to have a chat with anybody. Yeah.
Thanks so much, David.
That's all right. It's really nice to talk to you, and I love your program, and it's looking forward to seeing how this one goes.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it. And I'd be curious. Email me, buck@wealthformula.com if you got something out of this show. What I mean by that is not that you're just, dropping everything, moving to New Zealand, but just your thoughts on moving abroad, either, temporarily in a situation where you can work like New Zealand, or, potentially for retirement. I know, most of you are not necessarily ready to retire, but, if you're in your 50s and such, which a number of you are, looking out 10, 15 years, it might be kind of fun to think about what some of those possibilities might be. Nothing else, go check out New Zealand. I've never been there. I hear it's beautiful, and write it off as a potential exploration trip for financial purposes. Anyway, that's it for me today on this episode of Wealth Formula Podcast. This is Buck Joffrey signing off.
Thank you for listening to the Wealth Formula Podcast. Visit us on the web at wealthformula.com. The information contained in this podcast are opinions, not fact. As always, consult your own financial team before making any investment. See you next time.